I am in here at Double Diamond with Matt Carroll. Good morning, Matt. How are you today?
Good morning. It's a chilly one out there.
It is a chilly one, and Matt is going to talk to us a little bit about bindings.
Yeah, the kind of the little bit overlooked part of the, not as glamorous as skis and boots, but...
It really is, and I'm actually really excited by this because anytime I get a new pair of skis, I have no clue how to shop for bindings. I always just sort of go with whatever, they tell me this goes with. So I'm excited to hear all this.
Yeah, and it's, bindings, if you think about it, they're really the most important part of the package because it's the, the safety aspect of it. And so the important thing, I'll show this first actually, is we determine a binding setting by using a chart like this. Different companies have different charts, but basically, we determine a binding setting based on height, weight, age, and skier type. And you get anywhere from, 0.75 for the little guys, up to a 12 for the big guys. So I'm going to set this down. But if you look on a binding, basically in here in this window, you can see this one goes from 3 up to 11. Mm-hmm. So when you're figuring out what kind of binding you want, ideally you want to be somewhere in the middle of this range. You don't want to be at the very top of it. You don't want to be at the very bottom. So ideally for this binding, somebody would be, a 5 or 6, 5, 6, 7 would be ideal because then you've got room to adjust up or down based on, if your weight changes, different factors. But that's the first part in getting a binding. And this is kind of a, traditional step-in binding. This one's got the regular heel piece where it just pops up. This one's pretty much all plastic, so a little bit lighter weight. Another binding I've got here is this is the SPX. And you can notice this has a different heel. It's got a little more elongated heel, an oversized heel pivot. That's going to give you a little more downward pressure. A lot of guys that ski a lot of bumps really like this binding because it has more downward force, so you get a little better retention. But this one, if you look at the scale, this one's going to go, I think this one goes up to 12s, from 3 to 12, so a little bit higher range. But this one's going to be for somebody that's probably a little heavier, maybe a little more aggressive of a skier. And
last thing you want is your binding to come loose or release your ski in the bumps there.
Exactly. That's where that oversized heel pivot comes in. And then the last binding I've got here, this is the Solomon Shift. This is a new binding that pretty much fits all boot norms, whether it be AT setup with pins or just a regular alpine binding. But it's in ski mode now. But if you have a pin boot with the tech fittings, you can just pop that down, the pins come out, and then you can skin uphill.
That's awesome, and that has been so popular this season, having that release to be able to skin uphill.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, and it's super versatile binding. You can use it with an alpine boot or a AT boot. And that's the other part taken into account when you're buying bindings is what kind of boot do you have, what binding options are available to you.
That's great. So this has been very informative. And if you have more questions about bindings, come on in, come see Matt. He'll advise you on, not only what type of ski is going to be great for you, but what type of binding to put on that. So check him out. What are your hours here?
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
8 a.m., 8 p.m. Come on in. Up next, we're going to be back with a check of the local weather.